We went to a shopping centre appearance at North Bondi, and they're letting us in, walking us through these stairs, and we get out, we look over this whole area that the shopping centre, the centre stage was, and there's like thousands of people at this thing, and I'm like, wow, what's going on? What have we come at the same time as, you know? And they're going, no, they're here for you. I'm like, what, for us? They're little clubbies, you know? And we walked in the back way, we hopped on the stage, and they went bananas.
Hey folks, do you love your footy? Are you over 35 and want to be part of something very special on Anzac Day in 2025 in Gallipoli? Well, check this out.
The Slugs plan to play men's and women's games here at this soccer ground, the closest to the Gallipoli battlefields during the 2025 commemorations. The idea to make it spectacular, to fill this entire area with Aussie Anzac pilgrims. Vincent Malia tours with the Southern Slugs. Footy, he says, is perfect to honour the Diggers.
They would love it, I'm sure, because it's bringing Australia over there, isn't it?
Well, what an absolute pleasure it is to have the one and only Trevor Hendy. Now look at this resume, 4-time Uncle Tobys Super Series champion, 6-time Australian surf lifesaving champion, that's in the sport of Ironman. He got an Order of Australia medal back in the day for his service to surf lifesaving in Australia, and also inducted into the Australian Sport Hall of Fame. I can keep on going all day, but what a pleasure it is to have the one and only Trevor Hendy on this great show.
Thanks, Bevo. Now I've got all this sort of stuff I've got to live up to. So I was just hoping to be just a normal bloke, but apparently I did some shit. But, you know, mate, it's really good to be on. Stoked to be with you and talk about life.
Yeah, we'll speak a little bit later on about where you are at the moment and living in Queensland, beautiful sunny Queensland. But let's get back to where it all began for you, because you actually grew up in Victoria with a very passionate Collingwood family, mum, dad, Collingwood fans. And yeah, tell us all about that and how the sport of Ironman came about, mate.
Mate, you've done a bit of research there. That's good. Yeah, I was actually born in Preston. So Preston in Melbourne, you know, Preston, I was born in Panch Hospital. And that's also just down the road from where Ned Kelly was hanged, you know, so famous kind of area for all sorts of characters. But yeah, that's kind of Collingwood heartland. So back in the day when it was the VFL, obviously Victoria was VFL mad, and every town had its team. And Collingwood Footy Club started from really a lot of the sort of slums or real working class people. So its roots were very humble, and it was all about, you know, really playing for the knockabout bloke, you know, and that's hence why the joke's still there about missing teeth and all that sort of stuff, because it really is one of the people's clubs, really. Obviously, it's a juggernaut now. It's the biggest club in the biggest code in Australia. So yeah, I grew up supporting them. My cousin played for them in the 70s, and my grandfather used to, you know, host some of the players for dinner, you know, way back in the day. And so we left Victoria when I was 3, travelled around Australia for 2 years, settled on the Gold Coast with a lot of other ex-Victorians. And but always never got into rugby league, always followed until later in life, but always followed the AFL and was always a mad Collingwood fan. And it was like, if they were playing, it was really important. The whole family watched and all that sort of stuff in the early days, and managed to convert my neighbour down the road. His mum was a Carlton fan. I said, no, you know, Carl Scum, you can't do that, you know. And so he became a diehard, that's Damien, he became a diehard Collingwood fan with me, and we used to cry when we'd lose grand finals, which was plenty of them back in that day. But long story short was I you know, it's like one stage through Eddie Maguire, through racing at Portsea and doing promotions for the Uncle Tobys series, and, you know, had people like Nick Dacos and Craig Kelly and Darren Mullane and Michael Christian, premiership stars. They would come down and watch us race, and we would drop into training and stuff. And then later on I worked with the team a little bit before Mick Malthouse came along. So there's a whole Collingwood story here. But after Mick, I worked with quite a few of the players and became mates with them, and then actually came in and worked with Nathan Buckley for about 3 seasons at the club. Spent a lot of time there and loved it, absolutely loved it. And still doing a little bit of work there now. I do a bit of work with Craig McRae, actually, and a couple of the players here and there and stuff like that. So worked with a couple other clubs, worked with Simon Goodwin at Melbourne for a while in Melbourne. That was really cool. And Scotty Waters when he was at St Kilda. And the one club I haven't done much work for is Gold Coast Suns, which is just around the corner. So all the Melbourne clubs. So, you know, take the boy out of Melbourne, but, you know, whatever the rest of the saying is relative to that. But yeah, mate, mad. Always loved it. And I used to always say when I raced and they used to do profiles, what are the two sports that you're passionate about? And it was always surfing and AFL. They were my two things. And, mad surfing fan and, Rabbit Bartholomew and Ockie and all that, and Tom Carroll and everyone from Australia, and became good mates with those guys. And then, later on, like Kelly Slater became very good friends with. And I actually became friends with a lot of the American boys through Kelly for quite a while there. And yeah, Gold Coast where the big events get run sometimes. So yeah, I've always had a hand in these sports and been helping out in different ways, but they're my two passions.
And how did the Ironman thing come about? You mentioned before that you travel with the family with around Queensland and that sort of thing. Is that sort of, did you start getting into Ironman at a young age, and was it through your dad you got into that?
Yeah, so we settled on the Gold Coast when I was 5, and at 8 years of age I got invited to the Nippers by my buddy Stuart Edridge, and he lived just down the road. I remember him walking up to me, and I was in the front yard walking towards him like, "Oh, hey, Stu," and he says to me, "Hey, Trev, it's Nippers this Sunday. Do you want to come down and join?" And I had the words formed in my mouth ready to say, "No, thanks, not for me." And my father stepped next to me and said he'd love to come down, and I actually went down. Like, the first thing we had to do was 6 laps across the Surfside 6 swimming pool, across the motel swimming pool, just 6 laps. And I'd learned to swim in my lap around Australia in the Daly River, which is now where you go to watch crocodiles, So, so I think I always had in the back of my mind, don't be at the back of the pack, you might die. So I looked around and saw the other kids swinging their arms and everything else, and I kind of actually crapped myself, and I started crying. Didn't want to do it. I was 8, so you do cry about a few things then, and didn't want to do it. To my father's credit, and I love sharing this story because it changed my life, actually. It set up a pretty lifelong positive pattern, was he pulled me back and he told, and I'm hugging him, "I don't want to do it, Dad." And he told me, and he told them to run the race. And then they ran the 6 laps for my age group. The other age groups ran, and they all walked down the beach. And then my father, still holding me, says, "Okay, son, it's your turn now." And so he actually got me to do the 6 laps. So rather than all or nothing, this duality mindset, he got me to say, "All right, let's take out the scary part, racing other people, and I know you can do the 6 laps. So let's bring you, wait here till the pool's clear, and then you do your 6 laps." And it was like, I didn't get away with, "I can't do it, Dad. I'll never be able to do it." I didn't get away with it. He kind of made me do it. And I remember being quite okay with that. I wasn't like, "Oh, you got an overbearing father that forced you to do it." I was actually like, "This is a good deal. I'm willing to do this." And it just hit the right amount where I didn't give up, but I didn't rise right to that ultimate thing. But the next Sunday, I was like, "Yep, I'm doing it." Did the 6 laps and went on from there. And the reason I share it is because right throughout my life, I've had multiple things which might come up through this chat, but I've got to points where it's been super confronting to deal with this issue. Like, "Oh no, what have I done?" And I've been able to break that that challenge down and go, "All right, pull back a bit, lick your wounds. You don't have to jump headlong into this nightmare. Pull back a little bit and then work out what this really means, follow through with the action, and then pick up the other pieces later." So I pretty much haven't really had a cycle in my life that I haven't followed up with at some point. And I really think it's because my dad started me with that and showed me that finishing what you start is a good thing, even if you just back off to make it manageable and come back and make it a little bit more exciting or, glamorous later.
Because we have both something in common, and I actually listened to a really good interview recently with Rory Atkins, the Chat with Rats, and
I'll chat with that.
Yeah, and ironically, he's now going to play with my club, Port Adelaide, next year, which is just amazing.
Yes.
But I just wanted to speak to you about your own challenges as well in your early days, because I had the same thing in high school, and that's bullying. Because thankfully, both of us have come through the other side and overcome those challenges. But you see it so often, and seems to be getting worse and worse with social media and everything else these days. But how did you overcome those challenges, Trev? And do you look back now and think, wow, like what a career I've had, and isn't it just amazing to think that what I went through, how I've been able to turn things around, and what advice do you have for others going through similar challenges?
Yeah, mate, great question. And I think we didn't call it bullying back then, did we? We called it growing up, or school of hard knocks, or character building, or whatever it is. It was just what you did. You had the alpha males around you, and they, let you know what their territory was or what way you're supposed to operate or do whatever. And then if you're a bit smaller or a little bit less socially relevant or whatever the measure was that was predominant in that group, you just kind of took the licks, and so I, going from that story about swimming across the pool is I went through nippers till about 14, 15 and never won a race, was always thereabouts, would race in the surf teams. That's 4 people racing around a set of cans together and you add up their points. So one of you guys might win. This happened for me. One team member first, other team member second, the other team member third, and me last in the state championships. So I was the 4th swimmer just roped into it with these 3 gun swimmers. And first, second, third, and last meant we got the silver medal at state titles and not the gold medal, And so you feel like I'm a piece of shit and I'm pretty useless and pretty hopeless and I've let everybody down and I'm clearly not up to the standard and all these kind of self-talky things that start coming in. And I don't want to make them, I don't want anyone to feel like as if they haven't got something they wanted because I underperformed. So, but it just hung around. I didn't really have the motivation to get out of that state until about 15 or 16. And I won't go into a whole story about it, but I ended up basically asking this girl out who was at the surf club, and she was like, I thought she was carved from the hands of Nefertiti. She was a promotional model for a radio station in Brisbane, all the girls were doing their bronze medallion, and I was being the patient for them in my father's bronze squad, and they're doing resuscitation on me, and I'm having the time of my life. And then I took her out on the paddleboard, and then I got the guts up, this skinny, freckly little kid that didn't feel much about myself, got the guts up to ask her out. And sure enough, she said yes. And I'm like, yeah, so I got a girlfriend, and, and didn't know what to do with the girlfriend. And I'm pretty young at this stage. And then about a week later, I come back from a family holiday and came back and found her sitting on the lap of one of my club mates, and he'd moved in the meantime. And this is, it's like, it's still devastating. No, it's those moments that you have when you're growing up, and I was like, I don't think anyone even saw that I saw. And then I just turned around, hightailed at the club before anyone saw. Basically, I ran into a mate, confirmed that they were dating each other, and then walked through Surfers Paradise thinking, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not cool enough, I'm not fast enough, I'm not powerful enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not funny enough, I'm not sexy enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm, good looking, handsome enough, not built well enough, because I was with her and now I'm not. And the guy that was with her, he was the champ, and he had, in my mind, A plus B equals C, I added up that the winner gets the girl, and it's great to get the girl, but in my mind, the girl was tied to the dream to be like my father, the dream to be loved and be liked and be respected and acknowledged. And certainly if a girl likes you, it means like if you're not yet found your own self-confidence, I was looking for it in, would someone love me and like me, so not an unusual thing to do. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, but that my mind started reeling about the winner seems to get the girl. In fact, the winner, I didn't get the girl, I lost the girl, and I'm in pain and I'm in heartbreak and I'm reeling, walking through Surfers Paradise trying to find KFC to comfort it, And as a 15, 16-year-old, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't ever want to feel this again. I don't want to ever feel this again. And it's almost like, it's funny because I do kind of talk about it these days in helping people. I talk about it a bit like it's like a phantom energy. It's like a splintered version of yourself, or another little thing goes, hey, you don't have to put up with that. You could just win everything and you could put them all in their place and they could all get screwed. And, you could actually dominate and you don't need to be made to feel this way. Like, what are you sitting around waiting for? And then why don't you go out and win everything? And then they can, kiss your ass, all this sort of stuff. It's literally like this conversation happened inside my head. And what I did was went from, I suppose, I had a nice gentle power about me. Like I was a nice young gentleman, gentle boy, and I was loving and caring and had some really cool, beautiful traits that I later learned to bring back out of myself. But I went, well, they're just going to get your shit on, they're just going to get people push you around and walk all over you. So no, that's not who I am anymore. I'm like this guy. I'm going to be, in fact, I'll be better. And I'll be like this guy and this guy. And I picked all my heroes and I'm going to put the perfect mixture of all those people together. I think there's a bit of Dwayne Tyers, who was the world Ironman champion, trained at my club, loved him, adored him. Not the guy in question. There's a bit of Greg Norman, who was world #1, you know. There was a bit of Michael Jordan, I think, was just starting to come in the scenes, you know. There's a bit of all these people I wanted to be like. But ultimately, in my mind, I thought, this is the solution to my problem. Like, if I win and let everybody know, hey, look, you know who you're talking to now. I'm a someone now. You don't mess with me. I'll push you. I'm the cool guy. I'll push you out of the group, you know. So I didn't really do it. I didn't think that I did it to become all powerful and all conquering and to put other people down. I thought I was doing it without even consciously knowing about this, but I thought I was just kind of trying to change the rules so arseholes didn't win all the time, you know, and good guys could win. And it's funny that through my whole career, everybody sort of referred to me as the good guy, and you love to see him win. You love to, yeah, you feel like when he wins, he's winning for all of us. I had all these like crazy people, you know, not crazy people tell me this crazy correlation with what they felt with me. They were picking up on this, trying to be the good guy. But I actually did become the arsehole, you know, like I turned myself into something else, into someone else, so I was comfortable enough to be myself. But I don't know if you picked up the trap there, that you can't be someone else and be yourself. So my solution to the problem became the problem. And so now I'm the Ironman and I'm the guy, but I'm bulletproof and impenetrable and I'm super cool and funny and nothing knocks me around. I'm super confident and positive. But I just stopped feeding the part of me that was actually loving and caring and really loyal, you know, really look after people. So it's an answer to your question, how did I deal with the bullying? In some ways, I became the socially acceptable bully. I became the guy that could win in all the socially acceptable ways, be propped up as a hero, but actually underneath it all, it was like, cross me and you're dead. You know, I powered myself up and became this guy that just wanted to win freaking everything, Bevo, like everything. If we were driving home, I'd have to be the fastest home, you know, against my buddy. And that's not a good place to be competing on the, you know, on the roads of Surfers Paradise. It was just everything. We went to the nightclub, it was drink the most, you know, after races and stuff like that, or chase the prettiest girl or whatever it was. It just became, I'm never going to feel like the bottom of the barrel again. So in one way, I dealt with it by becoming the guy that couldn't be bullied, so to speak. What actually happened was I hadn't actually dealt with it at all, because it sat inside of me like a little monster that I'd never dealt with. And years later, I became good mates with Kelly Slater, and we stayed up all night just talking about things that would happen in the ocean that we could both relate to. And we both had a bit of kind of like a wizard quality in the ocean. We both had this insane connection, and we could do and feel what was going to happen next. And we had this beautiful conversation about it. But then we both got to the point of the recognition of there was this competitive monster that was built out of fear and insecurity, you know. And it's like, I think we probably somehow went, all right, let's get through this together. And I was a bit older and a couple of years in front. So I led the way and then said, hey, let's have a talk about this, you know. But actually helped me to help somebody else who'd been to those levels and higher, obviously. But yeah, so I dealt with it, but didn't deal with it. I had to come back and the solution had to be actually dealt with after I thought the problem had gone. And it caused relationship breakup. I was married at 19, trying to keep the girl, you know, and also not actually even being loyal and being the human that I really am, which is loyal. You know, it's I do really care, but I became this other version of myself, which was like, didn't give a shit and could justify it till the cows come home, you know. And then you surround yourself with, you know, pretty girls and drink cards and front cover articles and celebrities wanting to meet you and everything else. And it's very easy to believe your own bullshit, you know. So didn't deal with the bully, you know. I thought I did, but it turned out that I had to come back and face him later. And he wasn't over there in the end. He was in here. And then I had to eat a lot of humble pie and do a lot of apologizing to people that loved me. It never got manic and out of control. It never turned into an outward physical thing. But the way that I would just make others wrong when they were trying to tell me, you know, that, well, I might need to have a little look at the way I'm reacting, I would just shun them out of my life. I've got plenty of people telling me, you know, look at my trophy cabinet, you know. So, yeah, it wasn't until I met the right people to say, hey, mate, you didn't actually deal with that.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the Uncle Tobys Super Series because, like you mentioned before, you know, you were the biggest thing going around Australia. There was millions and millions of views on TV. I used to watch it as a kid, me and my brother and the family. Always, every Sunday it'd be on when it was, you know, it was happening. And I'd go to the events down in Galway and Glenelg, and it would just be absolutely packed, the beach everywhere around Australia. It was huge. It was almost as big as the AFL back in those days. And you were the man. Like, you and Leachy had so many great epic battles, and like you mentioned before,
you and your brother choosing to be me or Leachy when you're mucking
yeah, I
around
know. I had to go Team Leach and he was Hendy. Sorry about
that. get your brother on. Come on. We're talking to the wrong bloke.
No, I loved you, Trev. Yeah, no, I wanted to talk to you about that because, yeah, like you mentioned before, you're going into pubs and you got your drink cards, you had the girls all over you, and were you amazed with how popular the Uncle Tobys Super Series was? And obviously you won 4 of them as well, but yeah, were you amazed at the popularity? And tell us about those battles against Leachy and Tyres and these sort of guys.
Yeah. It's funny. I was sharing this the other day in a bit of a workshop, a retreat. We were sharing with a bunch of people about confronting the demons inside, and I was sharing the story about how the drink cards and infidelities and all this sort of stuff. And then I realized that they're all looking at me going, that sounds really cool. It's like, because what a terrible life to have, it's like make all these, like we're the center of attention for a little while. It's like, it's so seductive and so easy to fall into it. And it was actually amazing. I had an amazing time. Take away those little elements of it that were like incongruent with who I really was. I was still trying to make people feel really good. I was out, I really connected with a lot of people. I take all the other Ironmen with me. And so it was kind of like a bit like the life of the party. I was the winner of the series and I became the guy, I was the winner now and winner of the Australian title. And I was on the ads and long blonde hair, a bit Fabio looking, and I started to get this false bravado and confidence. And there's a lot of confidence in there built off the back of I'm the guy now, so I can be confident. So it was kind of fun times, and we would race. Go backwards a little bit. We discussed trying to get the series, the Nutrigrain series, into a bigger format and onto live TV. What happens, Grant Kenny spoke to Channel 7 about, Channel 10 about it, or Channel 7 about it, who were doing a small coverage on the Nutrigrain. And they said, yeah, we'd be really keen. And then in the meantime, they've spoken to Lifesaving and said, oh, we just met with Grant. That's a great idea. And they're like, what? You met with Grant? Grant doesn't run the sport, And he got called in and he actually thought he was going in to meet to talk about potential for the series. And he got called in. There's a judiciary committee that actually had to face, and they informed him that he'd lost his Australian captaincy and, you can't conduct a meeting without members, with members of a movement without permission, all this sort of stuff. And because we got together and talked about this. So we were bad boys, we were like naughty boys. We were trying to make the sport bigger. And what happened was he went to dinner with Lisa Curry, his wife at the time, Lisa Curry Kenny, and a guy named Steve Dillon, who was the head of Uncle Tobys. He was the new, young, like full of spunk general manager of Uncle Tobys, and then marketing manager, current guest. And he went to dinner with Steve, and Steve said, oh, what do you need? I'll do it. How much? Yeah, absolutely. Let me in on this game, We'll go up against Kellogg's, And it was like, whoa, someone's saying yes and someone's saying no. And so we tried to do let's talk about this so it's not a no from Lifesaving. It's like, no, that's it, you're done. And we're like, all right, we'll just go do it. And so that's how the Uncle Tobys series started. And it became this thing. Actually, we went to court because they basically said, you can't use the word Ironman, you can't race on beaches, you can't be in your own surf club, you can't earn money, all this sort of stuff. And of course, in court, it was thrown out from restriction of trade. And it was on the front page of the paper, the cereal wars. And the last time before that, the front page of the paper for sport was when World Series cricket went up against Cricket Australia or whatever, International Cricket Federation or whatever it was. And Australians, being the underdogs, went, bugger them, put on their yellow outfits and get the Packies and the West Indies and get them over here and we'll play, whatever it happened that first time. And they just started this cricket, tour on their own. And eventually, obviously, it all came together because they went, oh, this has become bigger than our 5-day test matches. There's so many people watching this exciting stuff. And we had the same idea. We wanted to turn it from 5 2-hour Nutrigrain races, 2 weeks apart, to multiple formats and maybe 3x25s and 5x12 minute survival and then pursuit ones here with times attached to it. And we'll try and bring the Coolangatta Gold back, but we couldn't call it that. So it was the Gold Coast Gold, and we couldn't even do the same course. We had to change the course and change the distance slightly, so it wasn't the same thing. And we did it. We rocked up Gold Coast Gold was a big success. Leachy won it. Craig Riddington second. I was third. I was pretty young. And we rock up to the next event, and I was the Australian world champion in the shorter stuff. And it was at Bondi. And we went to a shopping centre appearance at North Bondi. And they're letting us in, walking us through these stairs. And we get out and we look over this whole area that the shopping centre, the centre stage was. And there's like thousands of people at this thing. And I'm like, wow, what's going on? What have we come at the same time as, you know? And they're going, no, they're here for you. And I'm like, what, for us? We're little clubbies, you know? And we walked in the back way, we hopped on the stage and they went bananas. And then I ended up winning the 3x25. They designed this race 3x25 minutes, so it's between sprint and endurance. And so no one could possibly win all three. Well, I won all three, right? So it was like, oh, he's done the impossible. So now there's Guy Leach and Trevor Hendy. And that's where it started. And that was the moment this great rivalry went from Aussie titles and world titles, which I'd had the knock on him, and Coolangatta Golds, which he'd won 2 of. And I never got to do a Coolangatta Gold. But so all of a sudden we had this series. And then we went to South Australia. And I think he might have won, or Guy Andrews won it there. And then we went back to Portsea and I won it there. And then we went back to Manly for the last round. And Leachy actually didn't race. He was sick. So I won on, you know, I had a few points up my sleeve and I won the first series. But then next year it's like Leach versus Hendy and Andrews and Tyres and Riddington and Kenny and Sean Kenny and all these, you know, Scott Thompson came right up and John Robinson, all these people. And when we got to the Portsea race, we were coming down the back road towards the back beach of Portsea in the minibus that were getting transported from the Sorrento pub, the Whitehall guest house at Sorrento. And we're getting transported down. There's people for a couple of kilometres walking down the road with eskies and everything. I'm like, wow, is it like yesterday was the Portsea swim? Is there something else on? And we get to the end of the road where you turn left to go to the beach. And everybody who's walking down this road is turning left and joining a stream. And there was like 25, 30,000 people on the beach. And we were like, what on earth? And the idea that, you know, the powers that be, which I loved lifesaving, I loved the people involved with it, but this almost like an archetypal situation where the powers that be have said no, but the spunky, passionate, purposeful Ironman have said, yes, we're going to do it. And in come Channel 10 and Uncle Tobys and, you know, Ingrid Roper's the PR lady, was amazing. And next minute, an IMG in Australia trying to really launch themselves. And next minute, had managed Greg Norman at the time. Next minute, we've taken off. Had this experience. We actually had a mission that we decided amongst all of the top 12 guys. And our mission was to be considered one of the big 4 summer sports, because they always referred to the big 3 summer sports: tennis, golf, and cricket. And so AFL and rugby league was in winter, tennis, golf, and cricket. In summer, we wanted to be, no, it will be one of the big 4 summer sports. And in the end, we're only outrated by the cricket a couple of times when they're in a run chase right at the finish of it. And then they get the run chase and they'd all switch over and we get record ratings, you know, because back then you didn't have Facebook and, you know, anything social media. You didn't have Foxtel or Netflix or anything like that. So a few stations, it was got captive audience on a Sunday afternoon. And then a few times the tennis, a couple of times, maybe once, maybe twice. I think John McEnroe made a comeback. That's how long ago it was. John McEnroe made a comeback and was in the semi-final of the Australian Open. And so people crossed over to that for a little while. The match was over, and then they came over to us, and our ratings were like 2.5 million people watched us race, you know. So I ended up on the Uncle Tobys Vitabrits commercial, and that was played during the whole Olympics every night because Uncle Tobys were really pushing. And so for myself, all of a sudden, everybody knew this guy who was this organic Vitabrits guy with a young family. And, you know, you'd have to think they're better for you, you know, this whole ad thing. And next minute, we're meeting Madonna. And, you know, the racing was incredible and went all around the country. But next minute, we're literally meeting Madonna, you know, Michael Jackson, playing ourselves on Baywatch, and you know, so-called starred with, you know, David Hasselhoff. And I think you probably heard me tell the story on Chats with Rat that I played myself and came home. And when the episode aired in Australia, one lady had stopped me and said, "Trev, it's one of the finest pieces of acting I've ever seen." To which I said, "Thanks a lot, Mum. I really appreciate that." You know, because it was just disgusting. It was terrible. But and I often joke that, look, it's a past life and I've forgotten all about it, but it's season 7, episode 7. You know, but it was such a fun time. You know, we hung out in Hollywood for a couple of weeks. I recorded another TV show while I was over there. A mate of mine, Dave Simons, and Adventures of the Courageous. Never really went far. Made it into Europe. Recorded with Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible Hulk, and Pamela Anderson, and a bunch of really cool people. And so the series took me to some amazing places, and I built through 4 world titles as well, which were on every second year at that stage. And it's pretty cool to be in a place where it's like 4 times world champion. It's like you feel pretty safe and secure that you're going to get the lion's share of the sponsorship and support. So I was sort of feeling pretty secure and good about myself, and I seal the 4th victory. And my goal was always to perfect the race. And I'd never felt like I perfected it until I won my 4th world title in England. And I crossed the line and thought, oh, wow, I just perfected the race. I just raced my perfect race. And my very next thought was, oh, crap, what do I do now? And because we'd been moved to a harbour around the corner during this big storm, and it was nearly dark because of the moving the whole event, when I crossed the line past the cameras and the crowds, I was looking at a sheer rock face in front of me in this harbour. And I crossed and went, oh, crap, what do I do next? And looked up and there's a rock face in front of me. And I could never think of a better symbolism, because it was like I achieved everything I wanted to achieve, won all the titles, broke all the records. And as soon as I had one moment of perfecting the race, I realised my mission was done. And then I realised, oh, shit, now I'm going to have to deal with the person I've become. And it was like the rock face. There was no finger holds to get holding. It was just like, how do I get up this thing, And I started a good long look at myself from that moment on. So glory, incredible days. Wouldn't change that. Wouldn't change those things. Some things that change in more recent times, where I was probably a bit absent from my kids that I wish I was a bit more present for. But, it was an amazing, incredible time. And those guys, Kyle Leach, Craig Riddington, Dwayne Tyers, Grant Kenny, we self-referred to ourselves as the Big Five. That's how much ego we had. We literally blew smoke up each other's asses. But these are like my best mates. I would do anything for them, and vice versa. We would go anywhere for each other, those guys, and I still adore them, and it's a long hug. And I left out a couple, Darren and Dean Mercer, who stayed with Lifesaving when they were with us, and then they got offered $200,000, which was $120 for Darren and $80 for Dean over 5 years. So they got offered a $1 million contract for Ironman Lifesaving to stay with the Lifesaving series with Ironman, and they took it. And obviously they saw there's an opportunity there and were told the right ways, and they're probably glad they did it. They probably regret it at some levels, but we went on this trajectory of an amazing journey, and eventually we allowed them to come over and race in the series with planes. They didn't even have to race with Uncle Tobys. We let them come and race years later, because the truth of it was, Darren in particular was one of my great mates that I had my very first beer with. I learned to deal with an after race party with Darren Mercer. And Dean was a year later or 2 years later, and also someone that I loved and would always look out for. And he's Dean since passed away. But yeah, so there's a crazy, incredible group of people, and I've missed so many. And I apologise, Jay Gilbert and others. Crazy group of people. And then later on, I got to coach Nathan Meyer to 2 world titles, then Phil Clayton to a world title, Shannon Eckstein to a world title, who switched clubs. And I moved out of the sport for a while. He switched clubs to one club down the road and went on to win another 5. He won 6, broke all my records, which I loved and was grateful for. I got to be a major supporter and set up the coaching fraternity for Ali Day, with Zane Hamill, who was the world champion in 2018, hadn't been run into club for COVID since, and then helped bring Finn Askew, a young fellow, over to the club to help him get to the top, and he won the world title. So we've had this lineage from Dwayne Tyers, myself, Nathan Meyer, Phil Clayton, Shannon Eckstein, Ali Day, and Finn Askew, of world titles at Surfers Paradise, from Surfers Paradise. And the only one that was missing in there was Zane Holmes, who was Northcliffe, won Club South, who's a really fantastic athlete, won a couple of them. So there's some crazy things that happened with the whole thing and momentum and movement, but I see those guys as still long, softly held hugs and love your mates. That's how we greet each other, because it's been a crazy journey together.
And just a couple before we finish as well, Trev. I want to ask you as well about the big waves, like, overseas, Puha in New Zealand, and then Portsea in Victoria, and some of those waves are absolutely crazy. And were there ever days you're like, wow, what am I doing out here? And is this going to be too dangerous to compete and that sort of thing? And how'd you deal with those sort of challenges?
Yeah, I can tell you a time which I'll get to in a moment when I had that thought. But when I was in Piha, the biggest race we had there was on Christmas Eve, you know, and the waves were massive. Like we called them 15 foot out around the point where we had to get out on the ski. You could, the way the beach was curved, the swell was coming this direction. It was curved kind of like this. So all the water was rotating, going back out in this corner and this rip. And in this rip, there'd be 6 foot waves, like 10, 12 foot faces standing up, folding over each other as this water poured out. So once you got in that rip, there was no, I'm not going out. You were going out. And so Stephen King went out there, was leading the race on his ski, and out he goes, he gets through the rip, and everyone's like, yes, and he gets across the gauntlet where he had to paddle across this section, and this wave came and cleaned him up. And I remember seeing the footage later because I just checked to make sure Kingy was okay. I didn't know this happened. I was a fair bit behind at this stage. Kingy rolled the wave, and when he came up with the ski ripped out of his hands, when he came up, ski was gone, never seen. Eventually, I think they found it later in the afternoon, way over crashed up on the rocks on the other side. So it just went to the bottom, torn to pieces, you know. Craig Hackett, Grant Hackett's brother, older brother, amazing 400 swimmer, and Phil Clayton, one of the greatest surf swimmers of all time, up with Craig Riddington and Kai Hurst. They came in out of the first race. Instead of doing 3 races, we did 2 and made them a bit longer. And they came out of the first race and said, I don't want to do it again. I'm not swimming out there again. I nearly drowned in the swim leg, you know. So it was insane, but at the same time, it was one of the greatest honours ever to race in those conditions. And I got told, I had people like take photos of this and video this and stuff, but people were watching because we didn't have mobile phones. So people were watching at Pacific Fair, Christmas Eve on the Gold Coast, you know, big thing. And going past like Retrovision or one of the electrical stores, and all the TVs have got it on. And there's a whole mob of people standing there the whole time watching this Ironman series go, oh, you know, and somebody, I don't know how, I got a camera on it and took a photo and a video or something, eventually showed it to me. I was like, wow, no way, you know. So big waves did more to attract spectators than, you know, Michael Jackson or Madonna, believe it or not. It was when we went out big waves, everybody watched, everybody rang their friends and said, are you watching this? And, you know, these days you just text or, you know, whatever, tweet it or put it out on an X. Is it still called a tweet? Whatever. But so that was the crazy biggest day. I got to win at the PH. I got 5th that day. I got to win at PH in the first World Ocean Man Series on a day that was probably 2/3 the size, so it was still massive. But the wind was straight offshore. And so it was so hard to take the waves because they were doing this before they even broke, you know. And they were like, we've got this footage of a 10-foot-6 long paddleboard, and it's pointing straight down, and it's not at the bottom of the wave, and there's another paddleboard length above it, you know, like absolutely crazy size waves and everything. And I got in a really beautiful flow that day. Nathan Meyer and I did together, and we came down to the last leg, and he actually got cleaned up on the ski, and I just crossed the finish line on my own, just like, thank you, you know. First Ocean Man Day. But story I was going to say that there was only one time, and sharing this story from 2 ways was there was only one time when we used to actually go out in massive waves. So if a cyclone came, all the boys would come over and meet at my place. We'd jog a couple of kilometres up the beach, and we would swim out through the cyclone and go. You have to go deep. Sometimes you've got to go 2 waves at a time to get the water that's moving outwards out there, and you can't tell where it's going. And these are like 20-foot faces and bigger, you know, 25, 30-foot faces sometimes, like 12, 14-foot waves. And one time we did it, and I've got a bit of a sniffle today, and I had this sniffly coldy thing, and I couldn't not go. All the boys, all my young athletes are over. I'm now a bit of coach, and, you know, and we all ran right down, and we all started swimming, and one by one, everyone gave up. They couldn't get out. And I got to this point, and I'd known in my life I'd never, ever not got out. And so I'm going, I've got to get out, I've got to get out. And then finally I got to the position where I went so deep for so long under this wave that by the time I came up, I'd actually had this really weird compression thing because of this head cold. I was trying to equalize. It was a bit weird. I came up, there was a chop in between, which made me miss, like in between the 20-foot faces, there was this chop that splashed in my face. I'm still trying to spit up water while I'm already having to go back down to get onto the next wave. And then I'm having to stay down that whole time because I can feel how violent it is to get like under 2 waves, and then I've come up again, and now I'm now in deficit, like big time. For the first time in my life, I'm like, I'm actually in deficit here. I'm a bit under the weather. And then I'm like, this wave's breaking, and the only way was to get out. I couldn't turn around and go with it. I would have basically drowned. So I had to go to breaststroke slowly to the bottom and relax and stay for the second wave 3 times in a row. So, 25, 30-second breath hold, not that much until you're in this situation. So 3 of them in a row. And I got to the bottom, and then I felt the next one sort of surge over and break just past me, and I came up. And I came up out the back, and all of this, everything went like closed into like this thing. I could just see the next waves coming, and I'm swimming up the face. But I'm okay now. I'm kind of breaststroking, and I know that I'm out the back. But I got it to this, and then it slowly went and opened back up. And I was like, and I waited out there for 20 minutes to bring the heart rate back down, to get prepared to be able to try and catch a body wave, which when you go down it, you get to the bottom and you just get destroyed because it's a monstrous wave. But that's the quickest way to get in, is catch the wave, get destroyed, stay relaxed, get washed as far as you can in, so that you're not stuck in the wave area getting sucked in and out the whole time. So I eventually got this wave, got destroyed, just ripped apart, ragdolled, got washed in far enough, washed to the beach, and I'm like, not kidding, 3 kilometres up the beach. And it's basically dark. So I'm now 5 kilometres from where I started this swim, and I jogging back in the dark. And when I get back, all the boys are just like grey faced, just like, talking to Joe, my wife, going, we lost him, we don't know what's happened. It's like way too long that I should still be safe. And I got there and they're going, what happened? I went, well, I got out, then I couldn't get back in. So it was the one time, but the reason I mentioned it before was I went toe surfing with Kelly one time, and we were sharing a beautiful wave north of the Gold Coast that was big and clean and really beautiful. But he was under the weather with the flu, and he got dumped by this one wave and got held down. I saw him stay under for 2 waves. And that's not a problem, except when you're so in deficit like that. He came up, I picked him up, and he went out the back and was licking his wounds, and he said to me, I think it's the closest I've ever been to drowning. And I was like, I know this feeling, by the way, like this sucks. So at some level, we probably weren't that good for each other because pushed into other boundaries. But I remember thinking, I know that exact feeling, because you can be so capable, but if you get on the wrong day and just get a little bit ahead of yourself and you're not quite as prepared as you normally are, it can be trouble. And that's the ocean for you.
Yeah, it's really good advice. Trev, we could talk all day, but I have to let you go, unfortunately, mate. But just finally, you're doing some really wonderful motivational speaking at the moment. Do you want to just finish off by giving that a plug and where people can get hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Hendy Trev on Instagram. By the time this goes to air, I've just probably finished a series of 12 little mini masterclass videos called From Victim to Creator. So check those out. They're like 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes each night for 12 days in a row. So people can check that out. Hendy Trev, trevorhendy.com. I've got breath and breakthrough workshops, incredible workshops with Kane Johnson, ex-Richmond captain, an AFL premiership player with Adelaide, who went and actually studied with the monks in China and learnt Qigong, and so a beautiful human and best mate. And Mark Tiger Clue, which a lot of people know about Tiger. He's a crazy guy with a beard, and he has actually one of Wim Hof's senior breath guys for a while, and is branched out in different areas. And the 3 of us run retreats for men and women and mixed and everything. So check that out. You can see it on the website. But also, I've got a podcast now called Future Lab with Dr. Denise Furness. She's a rock star in genetics and epigenetics, Australian lady, unbelievable, absolutely love her and adore her. And Danny Erbinder, who knows more about this, forgotten more about this stuff than I ever learnt about it. And the whole podcast is on longevity, and we're working with Melrose Future Lab. They've got an amazing product range. There's like 11 products that they've put out that are cutting edge, like world's leading stuff. It's really, really cool. So I'm lucky enough to be an ambassador for them and work with them now that I'm aging. I get to actually test that stuff myself. But absolute honour to be doing all that sort of work together. And yeah, I'm out there speaking and doing sessions and all that, but a lot of it can be found trevorhendy.com or Hendy Trev or Trevor Hendy on YouTube, and watch some of our 4-wheel drive trips.
Well, mate, you have to come over to Adelaide so we can do a beer and you can jump into and do the chat here in the studio next time.
No problems, mate. Part 2.
Absolutely. Hey, it's been an absolute honour, Trev.
And next time, get your brother in too, okay? The Hendy guy.
Yeah, absolutely, I will, for sure.
Shout out to him.
Well, I had Leachy a couple of years ago, so I thought I'd better get Trev on. So
There you go. There you go.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for giving up your time, mate, and we look forward to speaking again soon.